Good evening, Rebels. I think it's just before 7 o'clock, and I just wanted to jump on this evening and talk about everything overwhelm. I don't know about you and wherever you might be and where you're commuting back from this evening, but it's been a pretty awful spring day here in Kent. So here's to a much better day tomorrow. So this evening I wanted to touch on overwhelm, and we've all been there, we've all had those feelings, and undoubtedly they'll crop up in our corporate day-to-day lives. They certainly did for me. And I mentioned on my very earliest, I think, Facebook Live that these feelings of overwhelm can actually crop up when we're in those kind of feelings of despair about wanting to leave corporate world, maybe those feelings of uncertainty about whether to go or not, then the feelings of actually taking the plunge and handing in that letter of resignation or emailing it over, or those feelings of overwhelm when you've made the decision, you've handed in the resignation, and then you're thinking, crikey, what next? So what I wanted to share this evening is those feelings are going to crop up. They are going to crop up in terms of overwhelm in our corporate lives. But part of the process is actually to notice when they come up. And when they do bubble up and come to the surface, it's actually all connected as part of that sort of mindset shift in planning your exit strategy. So notice them. Don't push them away. That would be the easiest route. And at the end of the day, they always come back when we're least expecting them. And what really came up for me in corporate world was I was really aware of what was going on with my outdated stories, my mindset blocks, my limiting beliefs. And what I noticed that as I started to pay attention to that and my feelings of overwhelm, then in my latter days of corporate world, I was really aware that I was beginning to share and to show up more as me. And in doing that, what then came up was those feelings of overwhelm in terms of feeling a bit like an imposter in corporate world, that sort of imposter syndrome that we feel because, my energy was beginning to shift. I was being more of me, and that felt sort of slightly overwhelming and different in corporate life. But it was a strong illustration that I was moving on to something different. So it's acknowledging that overwhelm and sort of working with it. And I get it. It can feel an enormous leap of faith to, if you like, press that ejector seat button and to leave corporate world. But you are leaving it for a real positive future, something different. And those feelings will come up when you're least expecting them. So what I wanted to do to share today, briefly this evening, is some tips that really worked for me in one, noticing the feelings of overwhelm, and then really showing myself that self-love and respect to give those feelings, time and space. So just wanted to share this evening some of the techniques I used in their simplest form at the end of the day. One was it's all about the breathing. So in those times of feeling overwhelmed, just being centered on our breathing, breathing into the count of 4, breathing out to the count of 5. I've become more and more aware of just tuning into those sensations in your body, and what are those related emotions that are coming up and what we can do to shift them. And a simple exercise that I've always found, and I'll pop a great sort of almost cartoon imagery up on Rebel Coaching later, is instead of being sat with those feelings of I can't do this, I can't go with these feelings, is moving to a space of acknowledging, that feeling of where you are, and that feeling is going to pass. You're not going to hold on to it forever. The other thing I felt really useful is, and it's come up many times, is those affirmations and that reframing. So, shifting from that space of, oh my goodness, I've made this huge mistake, of leaving corporate world, to, I've now created a great space for future opportunities, really to do something that, I'm really passionate about and really ignites me in the future. Those other things, oh my crikey, what am I going to do now? To a space of I have choice now to do what I want that's going to really energize me and float my boat. So it's shifting, you know, it's being more accepting and more non-judgmental of those feelings. And something else I found really useful is if you catch yourself being in that real, you know, critical space or dwelling on an unhelpful thought, is just switching it and coming up with a very useful statement after that to say is, okay, I am feeling whatever that might be, and it's okay. It's okay and it will pass. So I'm stressed today, but it's okay, it will pass. Maybe I haven't achieved as much as I'd like, but that's okay. Those feelings will pass and I can move on. Another great exercise is just to remind yourself of maybe the top 3 things, top 10 things, if you can go that far, of what you're grateful for. That really brings you back to the present. And I've also sort of caught on and done a lot of things around mindfulness as well, because it just draws you back to the present and shifts you away about thinking about the sort of what ifs of the future. And the final thing I wanted to share is, you know, get out of your head. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow about journaling, is, you know, if you're in those feelings of overwhelm, get them out of your head, get them down on paper, draw them, whatever feels right for you, just as a way of acknowledging them and then being able to release them and let go of them. So the other thing I want to leave you with today is just some questions, some food for thought. So grab yourself that pen and paper and sort of dive in. So the first question is to look inside your heart and soul. So just thinking about, again, what are your deepest desires for the future? Just tapping back into of what shoulds or coulds are still coming up for you and shifting those self-limiting beliefs. You know, what are you still holding on to that kind of creates that overwhelm and keeps you stuck still in corporate world? And the things that I've tapped into in terms of self-love and self-care, and some of the things I shared on a previous live about how you can look after yourself, is what commitments you're starting to make to move forward from a place of self-love and self-care. And then more a broad question is that, you know, what am I choosing for now in the future? And that's going to come up tomorrow with some things I want to talk all about in terms of self-love and self-doubt as well. So we can all find ourselves in those feelings of overwhelm, but I think if we connect with it with acknowledgement and curiosity, we can pick up on it, we can notice it, and we can do something different with it, almost to prevent ourselves from being sort of moved along on the sort of crest of the wave of stress and anxiety. So some tips there, some food for thoughts in terms of noticing our overwhelm. It's all part of our kind of mindset in terms of shifting and moving ourselves away and exiting from corporate world. Tune in tomorrow. I'm going to be talking at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, that is, about self-doubt. Sorry, I think that's the order of the day for tomorrow. And I really want for us to take a look at that emotion sort of head on, so to speak, and think, if you like, a little bit about the size that it can become, the stature it can become, and the status it can become in our own minds if we're not careful. So tune in tomorrow. Have a great evening. I've spoken a little bit longer this evening, but have a great evening. Just have a little bit of a reflection on our feelings of overwhelm, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Take care. Bye for now.